In the heart of Phnom Penh, on a January night in 2003, fire consumed more than just a building. It consumed the fragile ties between two nations bound by centuries of rivalry, suspicion, and blood-soaked memory. The flames that rose from the Thai embassy were not born in a single evening. They were the ghosts of forgotten wars, of kingdoms lost and claimed, of bitterness that lingered beneath the skin of both Cambodia and Thailand. Too many. It began with a single rumor. A Thai actress accused of dismissing Angkor Wat, the symbol of Cambodian pride, as belonging to Thailand. Whether she spoke those words or not mattered little. The story spread like wildfire, and soon the streets were alive with anger. Students, workers, ordinary citizens age carried in their chest the weight of old humiliations of borders shifted and temples contested. By nightfall, that anger would swell into destruction. What happened in Phnom Penh in 2003 was not just a riot, it was history itself erupting, an ancient quarrel reborn in modern flames. And when the embassy's walls turned to ash, so too did the fragile trust between two neighbors. Part 1. Sparks of Nationalism, Shadows of Old Wars. The year was 2003. Phnom Penh was restless, the air heavy with smoke from roadside vendors and the muffled sounds of motorbikes racing through crowded streets. Cambodia was still recovering from decades of war, trauma, and the fragile promise of peace. Beneath the surface of ordinary life, children playing with makeshift toys, women bargaining for vegetables in the morning markets, monks gliding barefoot across temple courtyards, there lingered a quiet tension. The Paris Peace Accord of 1991 had formally ended the era of open conflict, but the shadow of war remained etched across the land. Thailand, Cambodia's neighbor, had played a delicate and controversial role in this peace. Along its border, Thai authorities decided which factions of Cambodian guerrillas could remain, which groups were disarmed, and which were allowed to linger in the jungles. For Cambodians, this interference was remembered as both protection and manipulation, a reminder that their sovereignty was still questioned. National pride, like a dormant flame, could be reignited in an instant. That instant arrived in January 2003. It began not in the streets but in the pages of a newspaper. Reports emerged that a Thai actress had insulted the pride of Cambodia. She was said to have declared that Angkor Wat, the sacred jewel of Khmer civilization, belonged to Thailand. Whether the words were ever spoken did not matter. What mattered was the wound it touched. Angkor Wat was not only a temple, but the heart of national identity. It was the last unbroken tie to the glories of the Khmer Empire, an empire that once stretched across much of Southeast Asia. To suggest it belonged elsewhere was to reopen centuries of scars. In tea shops, university halls, and on the radios humming through crowded streets, the rumor spread. Whispers hardened into anger. Anger became a call to action. At first, it was the youth who gathered. Students filled the boulevards of Phnom Penh, their chants echoing against crumbling French colonial buildings that still bore the cracks of earlier battles. To them, the insult was personal. Their parents had endured the Khmer Rouge. Their grandparents had survived civil war and occupation, and now their nation's very pride was under attack. They carried banners scrawled in hurried paint, their voices rising like a drumbeat. What started as protest carried the scent of something darker, something older. Nationalism had been awakened. By afternoon, the city was trembling. Thousands surged towards symbols of Thai presence. Restaurants, hotels, and businesses were targeted first. Windows shattered as stones rained down. Fire spread quickly from one building to the next, embers carried by the dry January wind. The smell of burning plastic and wood filled the avenues, and the sound of shouts merged with the crackle of flames. The anger was no longer directed at words or rumors, but at everything tied to Thailand. It was a storm without a single leader, carried forward by memory, pride, and fury. As night fell, the embassy loomed in the distance, a symbol too great to ignore. Its walls stood behind iron gates, guarded by a handful of police who watched the swelling crowd with dread. Torches lit the faces of those pressing forward. Some had wrapped scarves around their heads, others carried flags, and many gripped stones, sticks, or bottles. In their eyes, the embassy was not a building but a fortress of foreign arrogance, a reminder that Cambodia's dignity had been mocked. Chants rose louder, demanding respect, demanding justice. The gates buckled under the weight of the mob. Inside, Thai diplomats and staff scrambled. They had heard the rumors, had felt the tremors of unrest throughout the day, but now the fury was at their doorstep. Phones rang endlessly as they tried to contact Phnom Penh authorities, pleading for protection. Some prepared to flee, gathering essential papers, clutching passports and family photos. The embassy's flag, proud in daylight, fluttered nervously against the smoke-filled sky. The first flames touched the building before midnight. Molotov cocktails smashed against the outer walls, igniting curtains, wood, and plastic. The crowd roared as fire consumed the embassy's facade. For those outside, it was an act of vengeance. For those inside, it was terror. Diplomats were rushed out under the cover of police escorts, chased by shouts and thrown stones. Vehicles carrying them away were overturned and torched, the night echoing with chaos. The embassy, once a place of diplomacy, became an inferno. Its walls cracked as heat spread through every room. Documents, portraits, and official seals burned alongside furniture. The night sky above Phnom Penh glowed red, the embassy's destruction visible across the city. Ordinary families watched from balconies, clutching their children, unable to believe what they were seeing. Some cheered, swept up by nationalist pride. Others whispered prayers, fearing what would come next. Beyond the flames, history was at work. This was not merely a reaction to a rumor. It was the weight of centuries, the memory of wars between Khmer and Siamese kingdoms, the shifting of borders, the loss of temples and lands. The rivalry had never truly died, only slumbered beneath treaties and speeches. Now it roared awake. Thailand's response was immediate and furious. Its government evacuated its citizens from Cambodia, demanding safety for the missing and accountability for the destruction. Diplomatic ties, already fragile, snapped under the pressure. For a moment, the region feared war, for the embassy burning was not only a crime against property, but an insult against a nation's honor. Thailand recalled its ambassador. Cambodia's leaders scrambled to control the damage, both literal and political, while trying to calm a public that had tasted the intoxicating power of rage. Yet amidst the fire and politics, the streets of Phnom Penh told another story. Families hurried to lock their doors as the riots spread beyond control. Vendors wept as their stalls, built from years of sacrifice, collapsed in flames. Children huddled in darkened rooms as the sound of gunshots cracked in the distance. Some students who had begun their day with protest slogans returned home with bloodied faces, their clothes smelling of smoke. For them, nationalism was no longer abstract. It was fire on their skin, chaos in their streets, and fear in their lungs. The embassy continued to burn long into the night. Its skeletal remains stood as a warning, a testament to what anger can consume when history is left unresolved. In the glow of destruction, Cambodia confronted the truth that peace built on silence is fragile, and that beneath ordinary life, the past waits patiently for a spark. Part 2. The night the embassy fell to fire. The morning after the embassy fire, Phnom Penh awoke under a haze of smoke and silence. Ash still drifted across the boulevards, settling on cars, bicycles, and the rooftops of homes. Where the Thai embassy once stood, only a blackened skeleton remained, its windows hollow, its walls charred. Around it lay broken glass, scorched vehicles, and the faint smell of gasoline. The night's fury had passed, leaving behind a city stunned by its own violence. Ordinary people emerged cautiously. Street vendors stepped out to sweep ashes from their stalls. Children peered curiously at the ruins, whispering about the fire that had turned night into day. University students, many of whom had marched with pride hours earlier, now nursed bruises, burns, and fear. The riot had been exhilarating in its surge of collective rage, but in daylight, the destruction looked like shame. Shops once run by Thai owners were gutted, their signs torn down. Some Cambodians, who had quietly relied on Thai businesses for work, now stood jobless in the streets. The government, caught off guard by the scale of violence, scrambled to assert control. Prime Minister Hun Sen condemned the riots, declaring that Cambodia would compensate Thailand for the embassy and the destroyed properties. He tried to distance the state from the fury of the mob, insisting the violence was spontaneous. But in Bangkok, anger was absolute. Thailand demanded more than apologies. For its leaders, the embassy burning was not only a violation of international law, but a humiliation. The two countries pulled their ambassadors, and flights between Phnom Penh and Bangkok were suspended. Trade and tourism, lifelines for ordinary Cambodians, were abruptly severed. Diplomatic negotiations began quickly, but trust had already collapsed. The memory of the fire was too vivid, the insult too raw. Each nation pointed to history as justification for its anger. Thailand, a modernizing power with growing global influence, saw Cambodia as unstable and dangerous. Cambodia, carrying the wounds of decades of conflict, saw Thailand as arrogant, meddling, and unrepentant for past humiliations. The embassy's destruction was not an isolated incident. It was the visible fracture line between two worlds, still bound by their history. For ordinary Cambodians, the days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Students who had joined the riots were arrested, their families begging for leniency. Vendors who had looted tea-owned shops were quietly forced to return goods or face punishment. At markets, whispers spread about spies, traitors, and provocateurs. Some claimed the riots had been orchestrated by unseen hands, perhaps factions within Cambodia's own politics, perhaps foreign powers seeking chaos. Others insisted it was simply the voice of the people, too long silenced, erupting without control. Yet beneath these debates lay a deeper truth. Cambodia's relationship with Thailand had always been fragile, woven with both admiration and resentment. Thai music, television, and films were popular in Cambodian homes. Thai markets attracted Cambodian traders. Cross-border marriages linked families between the two nations. But alongside these ties ran a current of rivalry. Cambodians remembered invasions, occupations, and temples seized by Siamese armies centuries ago. They remembered border disputes that dragged into the modern era. And above all, they remembered the cultural wound of Angkor Water Temple, that to Cambodians was proof of their greatness, and to their neighbors a coveted prize. The rumor that sparked the riot was powerful precisely because it touched this wound. It mattered little that the Thai actress denied ever insulting Angkor Wat. By the time her denial was reported, the fire was already burning. Rumor had become truth in the minds of the people, because it echoed older truths long buried beneath treaties and agreements. In the quiet aftermath, the Cambodian government moved quickly to rebuild relations. Apologies were issued, compensation promised, and trials staged for rioters. Thailand eventually restored diplomatic ties, though with a caution that lingered for years. But for the people of Phnom Penh, the memory of that night never faded. Parents retold the story to their children, warning of the dangers of pride turned violent. Survivors of the embassy fire spoke of the terror of escaping through smoke and shattered glass. Workers who lost their jobs because of destroyed Thai businesses remembered the riot not as justice but as loss. Yet the riots also revealed something deeper about Cambodian identity. For a nation often seen as fragile after decades of war and foreign intervention, the fury of January 2003 was a declaration that Cambodia was not powerless. It was a dangerous declaration, one expressed through fire and destruction, but it showed that the people still carried a fierce sense of dignity. Nationalism had risen from the ashes of history, demanding recognition, even at great cost. Across the border, in Thailand, the embassy burning became a symbol of Cambodian volatility. Media outlets replayed images of the flames, commentators spoke of ancient grudges, and citizens called for stronger action. For many Thais, the event confirmed suspicions that their neighbor could not be trusted. What Cambodians saw as an assertion of pride, Thais saw as reckless aggression. The rivalry, like the Mekong River running between their lands, continued to flow. In the years after 2003, border disputes over ancient temples reignited, particularly around Phria Vihear, where soldiers and villagers clashed over crumbling stones that carried centuries of meaning. Each confrontation carried the memory of the embassy burning, a reminder of how quickly pride could become violence. For ordinary Cambodians, life moved on, but scars remain. In small villages, elders spoke of the night the embassy burned as a lesson in restraint. In cities, young people remembered the thrill of standing against an insult to their nation, even if it ended in smoke and regret. And in the markets, vendors quietly rebuilt, their stalls once again filled with goods, though the memory of fire was never far. History is rarely about a single moment. It is about the weight of centuries pressing into the present. The 2003 Phnom Penh riots were not born in isolation. They were the echo of past wars, the shadow of shifting borders, the whisper of temples lost and claimed. They revealed how fragile peace can be when old wounds remain unhealed, and how nationalism, once stirred, can consume even the symbols of diplomacy. In the end, the embassy fire became more than an international crisis. It became a story told in hushed voices across Cambodian households, a story of pride, fury, and loss. For some, it was a warning that anger can destroy as quickly as it empowers. For others, it was proof that Cambodia's spirit, though battered by history, still burned fiercely. The skeletal ruins of the embassy were rebuilt, relations between the nations restored on paper, but the memory remained in the streets of Phnom Penh. It lingered in the charred stones, in the fear of diplomats, in the pride of students who once shouted against the night. It lingered in the silence that followed, when the crowd dispersed and the city confronted the weight of its own anger. History is not simply written in treaties or textbooks. It is carved in the memories of those who lived it, in the smoke that rises from burning walls, and in the uneasy silence that follows destruction. The Thai embassy burning was one such momentous reminder that nations are not only bound by politics, but by the unresolved ghosts of their shared past. And so, the story of January 2003 stands as a warning, not just for Cambodia and Thailand, but for all nations. Pride can be powerful, nationalism can be unifying, but when left unchecked, when fueled by rumor and anger, it can burn more than buildings. It can consume trust, peace, and the fragile fabric of ordinary life. Until next time, stay safe and see you in the next history.